I got a lot to talk about today, so buckle up. I usually don't use a lot of notes. I said that last week, and if you're new, my name's Philip. Hi, I'm the pastor, and sorry, this is what you get. I know you wish I was taller, so do I. But we talked, I'm going to briefly talk about kind of review, so you understand why I'm wearing so much orange, and no, it's not because of tomorrow, but I am going to root for the Tigers in the game, which probably means they'll lose. But here's why we talk about orange briefly, and it's a combination of red and yellow. Obviously, you knew that from basic art, right? But we represent the family with the color red. Family loves, they do well with love. That's just the way a family communicates is through love. The church shines the light in the darkness. We take the truths of Scripture and we try to be the light in the darkness, and so that's represented by the color yellow. And so when you combine those two, instead of just two influences, Reggie Joiner, the guy who kind of came up with this concept, he says that two combined influences have greater impact than just two influences. So when you combine red and yellow, you get orange. And that's why we say orange. We think orange. We breathe orange. We're trying to do a better job with orange for our churches because we believe that you, as a parent, are the primary spiritual leader in your child's life, biblically. We're not trying to change that. We're not trying to step in. We're here to partner with you, to equip you, to help you, to support you any way we can. And we're not good at that yet. But that's where we are. We also believe that every single one of us, whether you're a parent or not, is an orange leader. And an orange leader can be defined as this. An orange leader is anyone who influences anyone to influence the next generation. So you might not be serving in Grace Kids. You might not be serving in Grace Babies. You might not be serving in Grace Collective students. You may not be working with college students. But the truth is that you have influence on someone who's influencing the next generation. That makes you an orange leader. And we want you, even if you cheer for the Gamecocks, to be an orange leader, to think orange. Okay, so that's our baseline. That's why you'll see orange all month for me, okay? Whether or not the Tigers are successful tomorrow, which can be debated, right, Matt? Matt's a Bama fan, in case you didn't know. So let's get into it, okay? Just another reminder is that we're talking about the phases here. It's all just a phase. And so we're defining a phase like this. It's a time frame, we'll put this on screen, a time frame in a kid's life when you can leverage distinctive opportunities to influence their future. A time frame in a kid's life when you can leverage distinctive opportunities to influence their future. And this is not lost on you. You know this, whether you're trained in church stuff, whether you're trained in educational stuff. You recognize that there are specific times, some people call them defining moments in a child's life that you can use and shape. Unfortunately, we identify most defining moments in a negative fashion today, especially in America. But we also know that there are defining moments in a positive way. We talked briefly about Vacation Bible School last week when we were talking about preschoolers. And if you didn't see last Sunday, I encourage you to go online and watch it. It's on our YouTube page. It's posted on our website, gracecollective.org. You can actually subscribe on iTunes to the podcast, and it'll update as soon as it's uploaded, and you won't have to do anything. It'll just pop up on your phone. Okay, but we talked about the fact that these moments in your life, as you grew up in church, or maybe you didn't grow up in church, but Vacation Bible School was one of those for me that I just kind of fell in love with the fun of church. I fell in love with the leaders and connecting relationally with people. And so these phases, while we normally hear this idea that it's just a phase, right? We talked about middle school girls and those dumb fedora hats they wear, right? It's just a phase, they'll grow out of it, or maybe high school boys wearing earrings or whatever. For me, it was I wanted a Guns N' Roses t-shirt in middle school. My parents wouldn't let me have one, and it was just a phase, and they held on, and I got over it. But we're using this phrase in a different way now because they are just phases. And as I was talking to my friend in the hallway this morning, talking about having young kids and how challenging that Christmas season is to have kids, and especially when it rains like Noah's coming by in a few minutes every day and they're stuck in the house, that the days are long but the years are short. And it's just a phase. So don't miss it. So as we talk today, we're going to be talking about elementary children. And hang on with me in case you're like, this has nothing to do with me. I promise it does. It has a lot to do with you. Because the truth is that if you're a parent, or you're going to be a parent one day, or you had a parent, which is pretty much all of us, that we use the parenting tools that we got out of our parents' toolbox. At some point in your life, you're going to say something. Something's going to come out of your mouth, or you're going to do something, and you're going to go, holy cow, that was mom or dad. And you're going to hate it. You're going to hate yourself because you used to hate that about them. And all of a sudden you realize, I remember this, and this is a little weird, maybe a little TMI. You know how people have a scent? Like, not B.O., like some people have that, but you know, they have a certain smell, and it's not cologne, but it's just the way they smell. I remember waking up in my 20s and getting out of bed and smelling my dad. How weird is that? Okay, and like this whole like Roman thing happened in my brain. It was this really complicated thing. And I'm just like, that's me. I'm him. When did that happen? I used to smell like a boy, now I smell like my dad. I'm an old man. And I have like hair's not growing where I want it to, and now it's growing where I don't want it to, and I'm afraid that, you know, my mustache and my nose hairs are just going to combine one day to take over my face. But the truth is, in parenting, we use the tools that we got out of our parents' toolbox by default. There's not a lot of us that go along in history and go, you know what, I'm going to become a better parent. I'm going to parent in a different way. Sure, if your parents are strict, you're a little more lenient, or if your parents were too lenient, you're probably a little more strict. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the everyday stuff that just happens in parenting. When you say, because I said so, you swore you never say that. But that's what we do. We don't really know how to train up a child. As a matter of fact, briefly, I'm going to tell you this. In Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6, you've seen this, you've read this, you know this. If you want to get a Bible out and mark it, you probably should. But it says this in Proverbs 22, verse 6, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Which every parent of any child ever in the history of the world wants to look at God and say, you promise? Because there are times when we're like, I'm not so sure they're not going to go astray. But the truth is, we'd probably have to point the finger at us and say, how well are we training up our children? I mean, do you think about it that way? Or do you think about it just hold on to try and get through the roller coaster that is parenting? Are you training your child in the same way that you trained for a sport or you trained for your job? Are you thinking about parenting that way? Are you thinking about working with children in that way? That you're actually training them up for life? Because the truth is that most of us don't. I'll be honest with you. I've been a parent now for almost 12 years. I'm pretty sure I've regressed in parenting, not gotten better. Like day one, I had a whole lot more patience and compassion, and now I'm just like, are you freaking kidding me? Go to your room. I don't even know what you did. I didn't even hear what was going on. I just have a feeling. Go to your room. I'm not good at this. I don't feel like I'm good at this. And hopefully I'm not alone in that. I think you'd probably say the same from time to time. So, we talked about preschoolers last year, and we kind of gave one big word that we wanted to identify with them, and that word, anybody remember a little participation? Embrace, very good. That we needed to embrace their physical needs to establish trust. We need to embrace their lives as a small group leader or a volunteer in their life. We need to be consistent so we can establish trust and build trust. We need to embrace their needs physically so we can establish trust in them emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Well, the one word for elementary age kids is engage. That's the word that we need to do. And each phase that you encounter as a parent, or each phase that you encounter as a volunteer or a person involved in the life of a child, you have to re-engage at each step. Because it's like, holy mackerel, for us, we really had to re-engage. We had kids, get this, okay? How smart are we? We had 3 kids who could all bathe themselves, feed themselves on Saturday morning when we're in bed, go to the bathroom by themselves, and we decided to have another kid. You got to re-engage at that point. As you get through that preschool phase and you think, okay, they can do it, I can relax. No, you can't relax. You've got to re-engage. And when it comes to elementary school students, you really have to engage because everything changed in the blink of an eye. Everything's different. Everything's different. The one-word job description is engage because elementary-aged kids are motivated by fun. Preschoolers are motivated by safety. Elementary-aged kids are motivated by fun. Everything is fun. Everything can be fun. Even if you break through that wall and teach them chores can be fun. Everything is about fun for an elementary-age kid. So parents, what are you trying to do? How are you trying to engage? You're trying to engage in the things that they're interested in so that you can earn relational credit. You engage in their interests so that you can earn relational credit. And yes, parents, you have to earn relational credit with your kids. I grew up, and maybe you did too, in kind of this idea that respect was something that you just gave. That's not true. Respect is earned. Real respect is earned. Positional respect, that's fine. That usually works in the military, sometimes. It doesn't work in your house. So if you want to have relational credit with them down the road, you've got to engage in their interests now. If you're a volunteer or a leader with kids, then you have to be a consistent adult. Remember last week we talked about the importance of a preschooler having a consistent adult each week, and I talked about how Savannah Grace at age 3 in a brand new church for 5 weeks didn't see a single familiar face in the room we were sticking her in. Some of you parents, I'm so proud of you. You're putting kids in our environments for the first time, and that's such a big step. You got to walk away and they're screaming and crying. You're just like, I'm a terrible parent. What am I doing? No, you're good. Because you're establishing boundaries. You're helping them move into that next phase. It's tough. It's difficult. But as we said with preschool students, that a consistent adult face is important for them so that because the unfamiliar is terrifying. With elementary age students, consistent adult is important because they'll tell a stranger anything. Am I right? They will tell a stranger anything. If you engage in a conversation with an elementary school student, you better sit down. Because they can talk. They will talk the paint off the walls. And it doesn't have to be about anything. You don't even have to give them subject matter. They'll just go. If you just engage with them, they're like, I've got you. You're mine. But you do that because in the same way that a preschooler will shut down with the unfamiliar, an elementary student will give their attention to anyone who gives them attention. And that can be a very dangerous thing. As we see time and time again in the news, so scary, the world we live in today. So we need volunteers. We need leaders who understand the unique needs of an elementary age student and will be a consistent person in that child's life. So when it comes to the kindergarten through first phase, just like in preschool and elementary, there are different phases. So kindergarten through first grade, it's when unfiltered words make you laugh, homework makes you cry, and life becomes a stage. It's where your kid shouts, look at me. Now, I've got Mac, who's in kindergarten this year. Everything is a stage. I mean, right now, he leads worship. And I don't mean that jokingly. There's a 6-year-old that has led worship at this church for children since we started. And this is how far it goes. He sits down with me in my office and picks out the songs for the month. And I went back there during service last week to watch him. He's not just like some joking kid like playing around. And I know I'm bragging on my kid, but if it was somebody else's kid, I'd say the same thing. He is legitimately leading the other children in worship with hand motions that make sense. He's not just up there doing the robot or anything, okay? I mean, he thinks about it. He sits in our living room with the iPad, pulls up the songs, and thinks through these things because the world's a stage for him. Think about it. Think back. Maybe you've got elementary kids, students. Maybe you think back to elementary school for you. I remember as I got into elementary school, talent shows became the most important thing in the world, right? And you had to do the talent show audition because every single kid in the school wanted to be in the talent show. So these poor teachers had to sit through these awful, awful auditions. Would you like to know what I did? When I was in second grade, I think it was, I did two things. I had a best friend of mine, Tony, who was moving away, so we did a comedy routine. We were a Siamese kid, and we were doing jokes, and we wore this big parka so that we were like one arm out here, and he has his arm out there, and we had all these different products. One of these products I remember was Lost cereal, and this is terrible. This is the twisted mind that I grew up with. Okay, Lost cereal. Did this whole commercial for it. So the whole bit was, here's the punchline. Ready? So kids, next time you're in the cereal, tell your parents to get lost. That was it. Like, I was in second grade saying this sarcastic, mean things. But the real show for me was and this may be a huge indictment on my parents. I did the scene from Risky Business that Tom Cruise sings in his underwear around the house. Okay, if you're under the age of maybe like 25 or 30, you don't even know what I'm talking about. But Tom Cruise, young age, he has sunglasses on, a white dress shirt, underwear, tighty whities, mind you, and socks, and he's singing That Old Time Rock and Roll by Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. Are you impressed yet that I knew that? Still remember that? Okay, good. Got some relational credit with some of the older crowd here, okay? But I did. Second grader, rolling around in his underwear in his school singing that song. How inappropriate is that? Mom, I know you're going to watch this. Shame on you. Okay? But that's what it was in elementary school. Everything's a stage. Now think fast forward to high school. Nobody does the talent show. As a matter of fact, it's a question mark if you're going to have enough acts to have the talent show. And we'll talk about high school in just a couple of weeks, and we all understand why. But at this age, everything's a stage. So look at me. Do I have your attention? That's what the kindergarten through first graders are saying. Do I have your attention? Because I need it. Look at me. Okay? And here's what we need to think about. It's not, are they doing a good job? It's not, are they perfect at that? That talent show, I said it's awful. It's awful for a reason, because we're trying to improve their abilities. We don't want to shut them down with critique or criticism. We want to improve their abilities. Now, in the second and third grade, it's the sounds like fun phase. Okay? It's when fairness matters most, although my kids will tell you fairness doesn't exist in my house. I thought of this brilliant way to explain fairness to my kids on the spur of the moment. You can steal this if you like. You don't even need to write this down. It's going to stick in your brain like crazy. One day I was so fed up with my kids fighting and saying it's not fair. I said, okay, you want fair? You sure you want fair? And they said, yes, Daddy, we want fair. I said, okay, I've had your poop on me. I'm going to put my poop on you. That's fair. You still want fair? No. Pretty simple, isn't it? Every parent in the room is like, yeah, I've had poop on me. I've had poop and pee in places I'd rather not disclose. Now, Andy Stanley says that fairness ended at the Garden of Eden. Matt Chandler, who's a pastor in Texas, says this, and I've said this to my kids. If you want fair, you die and go to hell right now. That's fair. Like this awkward chuckle, like, yeah, he said that to his kids. You might need to go to a different church next week. I did, because that's fair. But it matters so much to these kids. Differences get noticed. Why am I shorter? Why is my hair different? Why are my eyes different? They notice all this stuff, and your enthusiastic kid thinks that anything sounds like fun. Now, in this phase, we want to broaden their competence. It's not just improving their ability. We want to broaden their competence in this phase. And then it comes to the fourth and fifth graders. It's the I've got this phase. Like, chill, Dad, I got this. And the big question they're asking is, do I have friends? Because in this phase, friends become best friends. And they have 1 billion trillion of them. That's my best friend. That's my best friend. Wait. You need to understand the economy, dear. You can't have more than one best friend. Oh, yes, you can. I've learned this. You can have more than one best friend, even though that doesn't work in the world. Games are for competition. All of a sudden, you're not just playing, it's who's going to win. And your confident kid will insist that I've got this. In this phase, they're trying to develop those friendships. And as we'll talk in the weeks to come, we believe that friendships determine the direction of the quality of your life. That's why this phase and these friends are so important. That's why every day I thank the Lord that he gave me the neighborhood that I have. My kids still get to play like it's 1982, and they go outside and they play and come home before it's dark. My kids have good friends. I trust the families that my kids play with. And I know that's tough for a lot of us, but this is so very important. Now, the other thing you have to understand about these elementary kids is that they think like scientists. You know, the preschoolers, they think like artists. Elementary kids think like scientists. They understand the world through concrete evidence that they can test repeatedly. They want to know what's true. They want to know why it's true. The more frequently a new concept can be connected to everyday experience, the better. So when you're thinking about working with kids and you're thinking about the way teachers teach, you might think, why is this so repetitive? Why do you keep doing the same songs over and over again? Why do you keep saying the same thing over and over and over again? Because at this stage, repeated frequency, all these things, they need to be connected with what they're doing every day, and they need to do it over and over and over again, because that's how scientists work. That's how we're creating truth in their lives. As a group, you may hear from time to time back there in Grace Kids Elementary, you'll hear them scream every week. Every week they scream, and they're not just screaming for any reason. As a matter of fact, Sam Pettit, who runs our elementary group, she occasionally she'll apologize for that, and I told her, don't apologize for what they're screaming. Because if they're just screaming for nothing, like, yeah, apologize for that. But each week they scream out the virtue. They scream out the scripture. They scream out whatever it is they're learning. That's important because they think like scientists. They need to repeat that. They need every single week to say that, to learn that, to know that. Because that's how they're establishing what truth is in their lives. The other thing that we believe, and you believe this maybe, depending on the children that you've been around, is that every child is created in the image of God. That's why Jesus cares so much about kids. Last week we talked about him rebuking the disciples. When they were bringing the kids to him, they're like, get away from him. And Jesus got mad at them. He got indignant with them. Because every child that lives and breathes is created in the image of God. They each have the divine capacity to reason, improve, to lead, to care, to relate, and to trust, to believe, and to imagine, and even to love. Let me tell you how brilliant children are, okay? I'm going to show you a picture of some dresses here. Check this out, okay? You see these dresses? Now, I want you to raise your hand if you don't know what all four, you got to go 4 for 4. If you don't know, raise your hand if you don't know what each of these 4 dresses is, okay? Go ahead, there you go, all right? Majority of us, right? If you were to ask any female child under the age of 11, they will tell you that the dress on your left is Elsa's coronation dress from Frozen. They'll tell you that the next dress over is Anna's coronation dress from Frozen. Then they'll tell you that the next dress to the right is Elsa's North Mountain dress. And then they'll tell you that the next dress over is Anna's North Mountain dress. It's what Anna wears to go look for Elsa. Now, Reggie Joyner told us this story about this little 4-year-old girl who knows all 8,000 words to the musical Frozen. She knows all 2,000 words from the songs from Frozen. And as a matter of fact, if she were to sing Let It Go, she has all these dresses. She would start out in this first dress and start singing Frozen. And then in the middle of the song, she would go and change and put on the third dress, because that's what happens in the movie. She knows that Elsa has a transformation during the song Let It Go and changes clothes magically. So don't tell me that these kids aren't brilliant. Tell me these kids aren't impressive, that they're not capable. Because these kids were made in the image of God. They have the capacity to do far more than we really believe they have the capacity for. That's why we trust a 6-year-old to lead worship. That's why we trust middle school students and elementary age students to lead small groups and care for babies. We don't believe they're the church of tomorrow. We believe they are the church today. As a matter of fact, the more active a child and a student is in the local church, the less likely they are to leave the church when they graduate. There was a 6th grade student named Allie that I got the chance to work with, and she went off to college and went to Auburn, and there was this big weekend at Auburn. You know, they play football some weekends there, and back home at her church in Atlanta, there was this huge event. It was called a Disciple Now. If you're familiar with Disciple Now, it's like a big student event that happens locally. And they all stay in host homes, and we'll do this one day. It's a lot of fun. But she chose to say no to her college activities to come back home because it was such an important and distinctive opportunity in the life of the students that she was leading small group with when she was home? How many college students do you know that leave what they're doing at school to come home to pour their lives into the next generation? That's huge. Now, I want to show you something. My daughter asked me why there was a coffin on stage today. And I told her that if you'd grown up 15 years ago, you thought we were doing Lord's Supper. This is a jar of marbles. Each of these marbles represent a weekend that I have left before Declan graduates from high school. 849 marbles in this jar. That's how many weeks I've got left with my youngest child. You're like, oh, that's pretty good, isn't it? No, that's fun. Okay. This is Mac. This is Mac. He's 6 years old. I have 573 more weekends before he graduates from high school. That's it. This is Riley. Riley has 416 weekends left before she graduates from high school. She's only in 4th grade. My 6th grader, Savannah Grace, I only have 312 left. As a matter of fact, I only have like 6 summers left. I have more weekends with Declan left than I have of my daughters combined. And the reason these jars sit in my house is because when you count the time you have left, you make the time you have left count. When you start counting the weeks you have left with your child, when you start looking at it from an analytical perspective, you tend to make more of the weeks you have left. Now, what I'm about to say is going to sound like a guilt trip, and I want you to know it's not. We have 51 weeks that we usually do church at GCC. We take a week off because we take the Sunday between Christmas and New Year's off because we want to say thank you to our volunteers. So there's only 51 Sundays in a given year that we're going to have church. That means about an hour a kid can spend in spiritual training at church. The average kid spends about 40 hours at church. That's it, just 40 hours in small group, in a worship environment each year. The average kid. You have a whole lot more influence on their life than we do. But if you're anything like me, I feel pretty inept when it comes to doing some serious spiritual leading at my house, because usually I'm just trying to keep things calm. I'm not thinking through how to connect them to God. So 40 hours is all the average kid gets in church. Why are we surprised that our children are so disconnected from God? But I was curious. So I did a little research on GCC and discovered that the average kid at GCC spent only 17 hours at church last year out of 51. Now, I did not consider first-time guests because that takes the average way down. So I said, any kid that's been 5 times or more in 2015. And that includes my kids who were here 50 out of 51. So they busted up the curve. But the average kid spent only 17 hours at GCC last year. Now, again, this is not a guilt trip. I care about our numbers. I was a little nervous at 9:25 today before you all came. At once. But if you feel as ill-equipped at spiritual training at home as I do, and I think about church 400,000 times more often than you do, then we've got to do better partnering together than 17 hours in an entire year. Because it's just a phase. A parent spends on average 12 hours a day with a preschooler. That's cut in half when it comes to elementary school students. Only 6 hours a day, if you're lucky. And dads don't usually get to spend even that much time. Here's why all this time matters. 4 out of every 10 kids will grow up without a dad in the United States of America. 80% of 10-year-old girls worry that they're not thin enough. Let me say that again. 80% of 10-year-old girls, not 16, not 19, 10-year-olds worry about not being thin enough. And 2 out of every 10 girls are going to be sexually abused. Who are you surrounding your children with to partner with you as parents? So how do we connect elementary kids to God? We tell one story so they know the difference between history and fiction. We connect one story to one concrete idea each week. We use real-life illustrations, not abstract metaphors, to connect illustrations to everyday experiences. We don't say that Jesus lives in your heart to an elementary school student because they're going to ask, well, where does he sleep? We use real-life illustrations. We let the preschoolers imagine, but we try to connect the scripture and the teachings of God to real-life illustrations in the life of an elementary school student. We make it fun. We play games. We use maps and puzzles. We sing and dance, and we're going to go outside if we ever get rid of the marsh. We want it to have a lot of variety because that's how they learn. We use a curriculum called 252 Basics. It's what we use. It's how we think Orange. It's one of the tools that helps us get down the road. And we have a little preview to show you about what 252 is. Check this out.
I cannot stay silent. I will not hold back. I want to open up and live a thanks roll out. I'm overwhelmed by your love, your faithfulness at all times. When my heart was hurting, you made things all so right. I'm never gonna stop, never gonna stop. I wanna shout it out that I love Jesus. Tell the world that God is good. Sing a song that makes me happy. Shout out loud that God is good. Yeah. And I cannot stay silent. I will not hold back. I want to open up and live a thanks roll out. I'm overwhelmed by your love, your faithfulness at all times. When my heart was hurting, you made things all so right. I'm never gonna stop, never gonna stop. I wanna shout it out that I love Jesus. Tell the world that God is good. Sing a song that makes me happy. Shout out loud that God.
What's our goal with elementary school students? It's simple. We want them to trust God's character. We want them to experience God's family. We want them to know what it feels like to be a part of God's family. And here's why. According to a Barna Group study, 94% of people, of Christians, adult Christians, made a decision to follow Christ before they were age 18. And of that 94%, 84% of them made that decision between ages 4 and 14. But here's the scary stat. Only 6% of adult Christians asked made a decision after the age of 18. This is the optimum time to connect them to the truths of God, to the grace, mercy, and love of Jesus, so they live a life in relationship with Him. We are here to guide students, children, adults in relationship with God and each other, so they can trust God's character and experience God's family. Not just see it, but experience it, to be a part of it. And that takes all of us, parent, volunteer, parking team, host team, whoever. We need you. So, do you understand that it's just a phase? Do you understand what's at stake? Do you understand it's going to take more than just coming to church 1 out of every 3 weeks? Not so that the pastor feels good about our numbers, but so that your kid is experiencing God's family and learning the truths of Scripture. Because it's just a phase. And if we're not careful, we're going to miss it. You can hear him right now. That's what we're talking about. That's what's important. Because 100 years from now, it's not going to matter how well they did in school. It's not going to matter how well they did on the athletic fields. The only thing that's going to matter 100 years from now is your child's relationship with Jesus. That's it. I hope you hear my heart today. I hope you understand that it's not just my kids at stake. It's every single one of us. Let's pray together. Jesus, thank you so much for your love, for your goodness. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to partner with you in creating your church. Lord, I'm asking that you would help each and every one of us to feel the burden of these kids, to feel the weight of responsibility for their future, that you've given us this opportunity to introduce them to you. We would take it seriously. Because each and every one of us knows what life could have been like if someone had taken it seriously for us. Many of us are here today because you used an adult in our life to introduce us to you. Help us to make the most of the time we have left. Don't let us miss it, Lord. I pray this in your name. Amen.